Okay, in this lecture, let's explore the function name convention used in the pre-RTOS implementation. The function names are not chosen randomly or non-structured way. So all the function names are very structured and they will carry a precise meaning. So let's explore the function convention used in the FreeRTOS. API functions are prefixed with their return type as per the convention defined for variables, with the addition of the prefix v for void. Take a look into this function name. Here, xtask generic create actually prefixed with the letter x. That means, so this function is going to return a value of non-standard data type, that is this one. So let's consider another function name. Consider this function name, vTaskDelete. Here the v tells you that this function is not going to return anything. So the return type is void. Whenever you use this function in your application, then you need not to check for its return value, isn't it? Because the API itself says that it doesn't return anything by this letter v. For example, let's consider this function. Here they are not checking the return value of this function because this function is already telling it doesn't return anything by this letter v. V indicates void. For example, take a look into this function. This function actually returns something, so it is not mentioned as v. So it returns an unsigned value of non-standard data type. So it could be anything. For example, if you can go to its implementation here, it actually returns unsigned port base type. So this is defined somewhere in the port macro.h, that is, it is defined as long. So it actually returns unsigned long. So let's move forward. API function names start with the name of the file in which they are defined. For example, vTaskDelete is defined in task.c and has a void return type. It's a very interesting point. So take a look into this function name. As I told you, the v indicates it doesn't return anything. So hence its return type is void. And the first word followed by the prefix tells you in which file this function is defined. So this function is defined in task.c, isn't it? So hence the first word after the prefix actually tells you the file name. So that's a very interesting convention and very useful convention used in pre-RTOS. That is, the first word after the prefix indicates the file name. So let's consider some other file from pre-RTOS source code. Let's go to timer.c. Okay, we are in a timer.c. Let's consider some random function here. Consider this function xtimerCreate. So the first word after the prefix timer actually indicates that this function is defined in timer.c. You can go to q.c. So here also the same convention is followed. For example, consider this function xQGenericReset. So this is a function used to reset the queue. Here you can see after the prefix, the first word indicates the file name, that is q.c. So that's a beautiful convention used. So wherever you encounter this function, without any doubt, you can say that it is defined in q.c. So let's move further. File scope static functions are prefixed with PRV. PRV stands for private. Let's check this too. So we are in q.c, isn't it? So every source file has some private functions. For example, this is a private function. Okay, so how to ensure private? You have to append a static keyword in front of a function, so that ensures that this function is private, or the function scope is limited to this file, that is q.c. So whenever someone tries to call this function from another file, then compiler will throw an error because you are trying to call a private function or a static function. So calling a static function outside of this file is not at all allowed, and compiler will raise an error. So this is a private function, and the prefix for the private function is prb. So here is the interesting thing. This function is neither prefixed with the return type, nor this function name indicates in which file it is defined, because doing so doesn't make any sense. This function is private, isn't it? That means the scope of this function is limited to this file only because of this static keyword. Hence, no one will ever going to call this function from outside this file. Hence, it is not required to include the info regarding its return type and file in which it is defined. So that's why they just used the prefix prv, which indicates it's a private function. Great, these are the conventions used for the function names in the FreeRTOS source code.